Okay, welcome. Welcome to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting. This is 9 a.m. Wednesday, September 10th, 2025. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at this time, citizen input. Is there anyone for any item not on the agenda? Is there anyone online with the raised hand feature? Seeing none, at this time, commissioner announcements. Anything, Commissioner Chang?
We had a steering committee meeting for the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project yesterday, and they reviewed the monitoring report for the 15-year milestone for the project. One of the things that really stood out was that across that 250,000 acre landscape that wraps around Black Butte Ranch, Sisters, Bend, and Sun River, the fuels reduction work that's been completed has dramatically modified fire behavior, predicted fire behavior if there are ignitions in that area. So the amount of acreage that would produce high intensity or very severe fire has come down many tens of percents from what it was in the at the beginning of the project, 2009, 2010, and the middle of the last decade. So just a good reminder that this community leads the nation in terms of hazardous fuels reduction on federal public lands, and that it has made a profound difference in terms of risk to our communities from wildfire.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that update. Last night, a joint meeting with the Fair Board. It went kind of almost a whole hour late last night, but it was really good. Comprehensive plan was talked about, but a special thanks for Jeff Hines moving on from Deschutes County. In fact, today's his last day. But a great partnership meeting last night, celebrating what we've done in the last half a dozen years with Jeff Hines' leadership and open recruitment now. But best wishes to Jeff Hines in his new role.
One other quick announcement I make, and we're going to appoint a couple of new members to the Public Health Advisory Board, in a moment. But we had a Public Health Advisory Board meeting yesterday, focused on, a lot of the focus of the meeting was on vaccination. The safety of flu and RSV and COVID-19 vaccines, and just the discussion within the Public Health Advisory Board focused, basically elevated concerns about the availability of and access to those kinds of vaccines. Flu seems like it's okay, but the RSV and the COVID-19 vaccines are very challenging right now. Insurance issues, pharmacies aren't carrying vaccines. So there was a lot of concern that the people who wanted vaccines weren't able to access them, and that people were getting misinformation about the effectiveness and value of vaccines in our community.
Well, it's great to have that professional group of people that really is focused on it to know the best information that we have at this point in time. So thank you for that. So at this time, we want to celebrate 10-year service to Deschutes County to Miss Whitney Hale. So we got a beautiful letter here signed by the commissioners, but thank you very much. The administration team, Nick Lelak, Eric Kropp, and Whitney are, the team that really are the administrative lead for Deschutes County, department leads, leadership, the culture of the organization, and you've done a great job. We want to thank you very much. Come on up and say hi to us for a moment.
And I'd just like to thank Whitney. Whitney has been here since before I got here as a commissioner, and my onboarding, my getting up to speed was greatly aided by. So thank you.
Well, and the professionalism and the, just decision making and empowering us to make good decisions also. So, yeah, if you have anything to say.
You, Commissioner. I'll just say it's been incredibly rewarding. I think you all know that I was born and raised here in Central Oregon, and I think 10 years has flown by, but I'm looking forward to many more. It's fantastic to get up every day and get to invest in the community that I grew up in, and looking forward to continuing many more years with all the amazing folks I get the opportunity to work with. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Nick.
I could speak for a good long time. She was in administration before I came to administration, and we've overlapped for her entire 10 years. I also want to recognize that not in addition to her serving as deputy county administrator, she's also our communications director. She recently completed serving almost 8 months as our interim human resources director. She's transitioning to also wear the hat of our risk manager. So she wears many, many hats. Whitney, you know I rely on you every single day to help with all of the duties, tasks, responsibilities that we have to serve our county. And I thank you so very much. Thank you.
So photo opportunity, and Nick, please join us.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, there we go.
I didn't realize I was joining.
Surprise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. You think of 10 years, you get to kind of the meat of a career at 10 years and see where it goes from there. So thank you so much for your service. At this time, consent agenda. And Commissioner Chang, you mentioned a few notes on there.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
And I will second it also. And just acknowledging Commissioner Dares at the Pendleton Roundup. She mentioned that the other day, so she's not with us today. So motion and second for the consent agenda. Any other discussion?
Yeah, two things I'll just say is, thank you to our new members of the Public Health Advisory Board. It was a packed room yesterday at the FAB meeting, and it was really exciting to, just feel the new energy and ideas that were floating around in there. I'd also like to, I don't want to pull this from the consent agenda, but for the Victims of Crime Act criminal fines account funding, I would like to know what is going on with that federal funding program. There has been, I believe, a lot of questions about whether the federal government is pulling that that funding for the state of Oregon. And I just wanted to, I would love to get a report back from the DA's office or the LIPSIC or somewhere on what's going on with that funding program.
Great. And then also for our vector control district, Four Rivers Vector Control, want to thank Duncan Atwood for his service, but also just communicating with the folks here that fact that I did empower, told the board it'll be up to them to do a recruitment process and make a recommendation to us. So I know that we've already had one person apply to us directly, and I did just let them know that I support that they can make a recommendation to us for that district. So that'll be the next item. So with that, anything else? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you. Item number 8, Emergency Management Performance Grant application. And welcome, Ben. I told you last time I saw you, we'll see you up here sooner or later.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yep.
Yeah, good morning, Commissioners. Nathan office, former emergency manager, and get to bring Ben with me today, which he'll be handling these in the future, but I wanted one last time to say hi. So yes, we're here asking permission to apply for the Emergency Management Performance Grant. This is an annual grant that we've applied for my entire tenure here and before. As Commissioner Chang, you mentioned, there is some, this is federal pass-through funding through the state of Oregon. So We are not 100% certain that the terms are going to be agreed upon for the state to accept the funds, but we've been directed to apply as if we're going to receive the funds. So kind of just cover that while we're here. But this grant is funds personnel time to do emergency management work in Deschutes County. So this year we will be looking at our updating our emergency operations plan. We're also beginning a phase to update the hazard mitigation plan, as well as a number of different operational guides and plans that need updated on a regular basis. And, a lot of this activity and work goes to support people with access and functional needs, alert and warning. And then really the biggest piece of emergency management is relationships. And I would say in Oregon and probably nationally, emergency management is probably the forgotten funding mechanism or the forgotten organizations when funding is distributed. And so this grant, if we are able to receive it, goes a long ways to supporting the operational costs of emergency management in our county. So we're thankful for the opportunity that hopefully we get to continue to receive those funds.
Great. So I know we've got our emergency management plan. I think it was about 2017 it was published, and then we updated it a couple of years ago also. So I was looking at the ESF2, so Emergency Support Function 2 Communications, which is a path that I go down in the state of Oregon. And just flip through the chapter, it talks about landlines and phone calls, and the world's so different. I mean, so just being able to pull up some of that and update it to the digital and the phones and the cell phones and the radios and everything that we have. So we'll see how far we can get down with an update on that also. Any discussion?
Yeah, Nathan, I wanted to dig a little bit further into the kind of federal funding uncertainty. So, yes, there are many federal programs that, that various branches of the government are threatening to withhold funding from the state of Oregon. But then, at a higher level, the Federal Emergency Management Agency itself, there has been a lot of questions about, whether it's going to exist, after this year. And I was hoping to hear any insights you have on that question, and then particularly about, this kind of function or role within FEMA. Going forward, right? So, is FEMA going to exist? Is this going to be is this kind of grant program going to continue to be a focus of the federal government?
Yeah, I don't, I'd be cautious to hazard a guess what the ultimate federal organization is going to look like. I would say that, if you look in history, we've adapted before, FEMA was reorganized after Hurricane Katrina, I believe, or 9/11, somewhere in that mid 2000s to be structured under the Department of Homeland Security. And there's been some discussion about what that organization is going to look like and where FEMA sits or where that function in federal government sits. But I would say that the work that our emergency management team does is important. And it's also required under ORS 401 that we have an emergency management program. I would say that it doesn't define really what that looks like. So it kind of leaves it up to local counties to develop one that works for the community. And I'm proud of the work that our team has done to develop a pretty functional program in light of, a lot of ambiguity and lack of funding. I would say that I think we'll continue to adjust and adapt to what the federal funding mechanism looks like. I know that there is interest amongst counties in particular to have discussions with the state legislature around what that looks like from, kind of what that state to county enterprise looks like. But at the end of the day, we have, our match funds come out of District 1 at the sheriff's office. And although we are, obviously we're constrained as well at our level, I think there's commitment to what the team does. And I, hopefully we can continue not only just maintain, but to continue to grow and improve the program and look for efficiencies within our own programs to make that happen.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't tracked all the FEMA discussions as closely as I'd like, but And I might be asking you to do that. You and Kevin Moriarty, who's funneling a whole bunch of pre-disaster mitigation funding to our local communities to do fuels reduction on and defensible space on private lands right now. But one of the threads of the policy debate that I'm tracking is, there's this argument basically that the administration wants to eliminate FEMA and push those functions down to the states, essentially to make the states pay for them. So I mean, it it's great. It's great to have some matching funds, but if we're trying to match funds that are going to come from the state that the state doesn't have, then it's a big concern for me. So I mean, but, kind of on the policy level, I would love to have again yourself, Kevin Moriarty, anyone else within the county organization that is where we see significant federal investment through FEMA, tracking this issue, and for us to be able to weigh in with our congressional delegation, Benson, Bynum, and Merkley and Wyden, and maybe send a letter to the whatever secretary the relevant secretary is, just kind of re-emphasizing the importance of FEMA and FEMA funding to our county.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate that comment.
So can I task you with that? Okay, thank you.
We'll look into it. I would say that, AOC and kind of the policy group, really looking forward to that support. And I think Oregon State Sheriff's Association is also, I think, getting more active as it relates to emergency management. So there might be League of Oregon Cities also. So I think there might be some opportunities for these organizations to collaborate, communicate about what's important from a local policy perspective and communicate that up. And I'd be happy to help support that.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe the work is being done somewhere else and you just need to get us, get the Board of Commissioners better connected to it. But thank you for looking into that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, there's the Oregon Emergency Managers Association, and they just happen to be coming here next month in Bend. So I'm sure that'll be a topic for all counties to be able to kind of take a big picture at that. So Ben, want to say hi this morning, but thank you very much for joining us. We met out at the Flat Fire, and your first day, right? Didn't even have the shirt yet.
So very first day. No,
but
Nathan had a shirt ready for me, so I was
What a way to start a job.
I know. But yeah, so fire events, we do practice, not that we want to, but I mean, we know how to go from 0 to 100, be able to respond, be able to coordinate, going from a fire district responding to a incident management team to a state fire marshal joint incident team. So we saw that just recently. Any thoughts or experience?
I'm just really happy to be here, and I think the Flat Fire was a really excellent example of some of the emergency management processes we have here, and unfortunately practice a lot in Deschutes County. And I think that was a culmination of a lot of years of effort of pre-planning, prevention from the landowners, the work that they've done on their lands, support from the county and the commissioners to get that work done. It really came together to be largely as successful as that was. It was really unfortunate. We lost some homes there, but I think it could have really been a lot significantly worse. And you may have heard mentioned around the circles of the Central Oregon Way, and I think you really see that in that event from start to finish and into the recovery process that we're helping facilitate with several of the organizations around the county to help folks recover and come back to a sense of normalcy. We're also using that event. There's still lessons to be learned there. So we're taking a lot of what we learned there, and the speed at which that incident evolved at. There's lessons there that we're going to take into the future and be even more ready the next time. So happy to be here, happy to be a part of the county and in this new world.
Great, thank you. And news this morning was flash flood warning. So it looks beautiful out there right now. This afternoon we could get some rain. And then I know kind of rain on snow events in the dead of winter or in the early spring is the other real tangible thing we need to watch out for. So
And for folks who are tuning in who haven't met you before,
Yeah.
you want to give us a little bit of your history in the region, you know, around fire and other emergencies.
Sure. Yeah. I came to the county here, like August 22nd was my first day. And that was after a little over 25 years with the Oregon Department of Forestry. The majority of that was here in Central Oregon. I was the protection supervisor in Sisters in 2007 to August 21st, essentially. And yeah, so a lot of history here in Central Oregon. Moved our family over in 2004 and happy to be here.
Welcome to the county.
Great, thank you. So then this is, authorization to apply. So just one other note, the concept of bringing it to the Board of Commissioners is really just making sure we're closing the whole loop on a grant application, knowing that, yes, we're going to apply. Yes, we're going to, if we receive, what are the requirements to, serve the grant, and then closing up the fiscal at the end of a fiscal year too. So that's the reason we'd bring it to the board at this level. So with that.
I'll move to authorize the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office to apply for and accept, if awarded, an emergency management performance grant to support the county's comprehensive emergency management program.
And I will second it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for chasing that federal funding.
At this time, item number 9, and this is a public hearing. So property line adjustment, minor variance text amendments. And we do have a script for us today. This is the time and place set for a hearing regarding file number 24725-399TA. This is a public hearing to consider amendments to the Deschutes County Code pertaining to local criteria for property line adjustments involving parcels smaller than minimum lot size. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed. So you have a presentation. We don't see video right now.
Oh, yes, for the record, Commissioners, Nicole Mardell, Senior Planner. It does look like we're having some technical issues. I'm curious if you'd like to proceed or if you wanted to wait a few moments. The presentation, I would say you're not really missing out on much with the slides. It's pretty similar to what you heard on Monday. I have them shared on my screen for those who might be watching on Zoom.
Let's just take a moment and take. Okay, so people are seeing it. We just don't have it locally. Okay, that's fine. So let's proceed.
Excellent. Great. So, outlining the hearing procedures as follows. So today, the Board of County Commissioners will hear testimony and receive written evidence concerning the proposed amendments. The hearing is also being recorded. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. Staff as the applicant will provide a brief presentation. Agencies, if present, will provide testimony, then interested persons, and following testimony, the board can then request staff to answer any additional questions. This is a hybrid public hearing with both in-person and remote participation options. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name as well as your mailing address so we can add you to the notification list. For in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet at the side of the room right over there and submit it to the board's executive assistant, Brenda, to the left of the dais. The chair will call up in-person participants for their testimony, and after your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front of the room before beginning your testimony. For our remote participants, if you wish to testify, you must be logged in using Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When the chair asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to raise your hand using the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you need to press *9 also if you called in, or use the raise hand button again under the reactions tab. In addition to oral testimony, if anyone has written testimony to submit, please hand that to me. If you're participating remotely, you can send that via email to me at nicole.mardell@deschutes.org. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another during that person's testimony, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is then free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. Prior to commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflict of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify himself or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide this issue.
So does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state the nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed.
And I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, member of this hearings body, based on the conflicts of interest? Anyone online with the raised hand feature? Okay, seeing none, the hearing is now open and staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So just a brief bit of background on this proposal. The purpose of this project is to streamline the process for property line adjustments involving substandard lots, those under the minimum lot size. And specifically, we're seeking to remove local criteria that goes beyond state law and instead directly apply Oregon Revised Statute 92-192. Through this process, we're also proposing to clarify the process and procedure by which this type of application is reviewed. So a bit of historical context. Prior to 1991, property line adjustments in Deschutes County really had limited regulation in both local code and state law. In 1991, the board adopted minor variance procedures for property line adjustments involving lots below the minimum lot size, and they established essentially a 10% area reduction limit. So a property line adjustment resulting in a change below that size, no variance was required, but anything greater than that required a more complicated discretionary variance review process. We assume that the general goal of this was to preserve standard size lots to the greatest extent possible, and the 10% lot limitation was intended to protect, our 10-acre minimum zones. In 2010, the board amended code to the current process, which allows an area reduction beyond 10% if you're on non-resource land and your property meets very specific circumstances. So you're able to go beyond that 10% limit without a variance. This was essentially a carve-out granted to relieve ongoing property line issues in historic subdivisions in Deschutes County, rural residential subdivisions, in particular the Dustin Road subdivision. So the goal was to allow for a streamlined way for property owners facing a similar situation to be able to correct their property line issue without extensive process or cost.
And those were survey issues, historical survey issues. So there's a reason that we would even go down that path because of the historical survey issues.
That is correct, yes. Around the same time, from 2008 to present, Oregon Revised Statute 92-192 was created and updated to increase protections for lot area-based standards. So that established a clear state process for review and the requirements for property line adjustments involving parcels below the minimum lot size. The requirements are quite a bit more robust and nuanced compared to county code, and they include specific requirements for farm and forest owned properties as well. The current situation that we're in, which is why this text amendment came forward, is that the current process applies both state and local requirements, and that 10% area reduction rule goes beyond that of state law and can overcomplicate situations that state law didn't really see the need to regulate. So it provides essentially a barrier to otherwise pretty straightforward lot line adjustments. For instance, let's say you're trying to correct a property line issue involving a fence or an existing building. If you're in a farm forest owned property with large acreage, that 10% limit can be reached pretty quickly. So we did hear quite a bit about this over time from property owners, and it was added to our work plan in 2020. And the board heard testimony this year during the work plan process and chose to prioritize the amendments. Wanted to note that we are seeking to amend 18-132 of our code to specifically remove the local requirements, the local limitation, that 10% limitation, clarify that property line adjustments are not eligible for variances, and they're not required for property line adjustments that otherwise meet the requirements of ORS 92-192. So by doing that, we'd be directly applying state law for review of these. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on July 24th and recommended unanimous approval. There was one public comment, written comment submitted into the record, which was one of the individual who testified during the work plan process, Adam Smith, who I also see is here today, in support of the amendments with just some tweaks to the findings, which we have incorporated. We haven't received any agency comments. And I wanted to also note that we are requesting the board adopt this amendment package by emergency. So we have included a draft ordinance number 2025-017 in your packet today for consideration as well. And with that, I welcome any questions.
Just acknowledge, thank you for the memo with the scenarios. You know, it really kind of helps anyone to understand the different scenarios where this may come up. Block diagram, obviously parcels aren't that simple and square out there, but it helps us with the scenarios that we're talking about.
I feel like I got all my questions answered either through the memo or through our Monday work session. Thank you.
Okay, so this is a public hearing on the matter. Is anyone here to testify, to share information? So, Mr. Adam Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners. Adam Smith, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, 360 Southwest Bond Street, Suite 500, Bend, Oregon, 97702. I'll keep my remarks very brief. I have numerous clients who will likely or benefit from this project. I'm not here testifying on behalf of any individual client. I'm just here testifying, I guess, based on the community as a whole. I personally support this amendment. I think there will be a number of people in Deschutes County who support this amendment. So I urge you to vote in favor of staff's proposed amendment.
There we go.
Pretty simple.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Anyone online with the raised hand feature? Okay, so seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on this matter and work towards closing the record and deliberations if there's support for that. So,
I'd support closing the hearing and commencing deliberations.
okay, and I support that. So at this time, acknowledging the Planning Commission's efforts, thanks very much for our members of the Planning Commission digesting what's going on here, showing support for it, looking for, kind of loose ends in the concept. And as we look at sharing thoughts here, as we look at the code amendment package, basically it just removes some specialty items in the Deschutes County Code and aligns it with state law at this point. And the efforts of the rulemaking have given us real good clarity on this. So that's what I think we're at.
Yeah. From everything I understand about the state standards, they seem like a sound approach to lot line adjustments, preventing some of the abuses that originally produced our local criteria. And, with that, I don't see any need to continue to have local criteria in addition to state standards. So I'm very comfortable moving forward with this.
So with that, do you support emergency adoption today?
Yeah. I move approval of ordinance number 2025-017 by
first reading?
emergency. Is that
So move approval of
First and second reading.
of
Okay.
ordinance 2025-017 by title only.
so moved?
And I will second that.
And we'll do emergency adoption afterwards.
Adoption, okay.
Got it.
So yeah, we'll
Moved and
acknowledge that as
seconded.
the motion in the second. Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang
Yes.
and Chair will vote yes. So this is a first reading of ordinance number 2025-017, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 18, zoning ordinance relating to procedural requirements for property line adjustments and minor variances and declaring an emergency. And this will be second reading, ordinance number 2025-017, an ordinance amending the Deschutes County Code Title 18, zoning ordinance relating to procedural requirements for property line adjustments and minor variances and declaring an emergency. So just one note, emergency is the adoption process to be able to just do it now. There's still an appeal window that can be out there. So just in the big picture, whenever we do these things, and I will acknowledge that. So with that,
So now I'll move approval of ordinance number 2025-017 by emergency.
and I will second it. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. Okay, there we go. So that's one of two today. So at this time, we have item number 10, public hearing, farm and forest housekeeping text amendments, not tax amendments. This is the time and place set for hearing regarding file number 247-25297-TA. This is a public hearing considering housekeeping amendments to the Deschutes County Code resulting from the state's Farm and Forest Modernization Project rulemaking. Staff will outline the hearing procedures that will be followed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Wanted to note that record materials project website, which is bit.ly/farm forest housekeeping. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will take testimony and receive written evidence concerning the proposed amendments. The hearing is also being recorded. The hearing will be conducted in the following order. Staff, as the applicant, will provide a brief presentation. Agencies, if present, will provide testimony. Then interested persons can provide testimony. And following testimony, the board can request staff to answer any additional questions. This is a hybrid public hearing with in-person and remote participation options. Before starting your testimony, please provide your first and last name, as well as your mailing address so we can add you to the notification list. For in-person participants, if you wish to testify, please fill out a blue sign-up sheet and submit it to the board's executive assistant, Brenda, to the left of the dais. The chair will call up in-person participants for their testimony. After your name is called, please come up to one of the tables at the front. For those who are participating remotely, if you wish to testify, you must be logged into Zoom or have called in using the Zoom dial-in option. When the chair asks if anyone would like to testify, you will need to use the raise hand feature to notify the board. To do this, you use the raise hand button or start device under the reactions tab, or if you called in, dial *9. In addition to oral testimony, if you have any written testimony to submit, please hand that to me. Or if you're participating remotely, you can send that to me via email at nicole.mardell@deschutes.org. The chair and staff are responsible for conducting an orderly hearing. Any testimony or behavior which is deemed inappropriate will be addressed and may result in that member of the public being removed from the hearing. Questions to and from the chair may be entertained at any time at the chair's discretion. Cross-examination of people testifying will not be allowed. However, if any person wishes to ask a question of another, please direct your question to the chair after being recognized. The chair is then free to decide whether or not to ask such questions of the person testifying. Prior to commencement of the hearing, any party may challenge the qualifications of any commissioner for conflicts of interest. This challenge must be documented with specific reasons supported by facts. Should any commissioner be challenged, the member may disqualify himself or herself, withdraw from the hearing, or make a statement on the record of their capacity to hear and decide the issue.
Does any commissioner have anything to disclose? And if so, please state nature of same and whether you can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed.
I have nothing to disclose and I can proceed also. Does any party wish to challenge any commissioner, member of this hearings body, based on conflicts of interest? Is there anyone online with the raised hand feature? Okay, so seeing none, the hearing is now open and staff will proceed with a brief staff report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this project is to amend county code to integrate rule changes resulting from the state's Farm and Forest Modernization Project. For those who may not be familiar, it's the first of a multi-year effort from the state's Department of Land Conservation and Development and the Land Conservation Development Commission to update requirements associated with the farm and forest land conservation programs at the state level that have been in place since 1973. Over the last 10 years or so, interested parties, LCDC, and the courts have identified a number of issues needing review, and this is the first rulemaking package completed by LCDC on the work plan. This rulemaking package specifically incorporates key case law interpretations, conforming rule changes to align with statute, and provides clarity and consistency for the application of standards in review across multiple jurisdictions. This package was adopted by LCDC in late 2024 and it became effective on January 1st. We as staff have been directly applying it to date. So the purpose of this project is just to amend our local code, although we have already been directly applying it. We did provide an update to the board this year in February, providing more detail on the project. That memo was also included in the board's packet on Monday, but we are going to provide just a very brief update of some of the key items today. The first is that there was one of the first key case law updates to state rule relates to the farm impacts test. So this relates to review of any conditional use in the exclusive farm use or EFU zone, and requires the county to make findings that that conditional use does not force a significant change in farm and forest practices and does not significantly increase the cost of farm and forest practices on surrounding lands. So this rulemaking provides essentially step-by-step analysis to provide sufficient review. The second relates to agritourism event standards. There's a criteria that requires that agritourism events are incidental and subordinate to the primary use on the property, which is agriculture. So it clarifies how to review that specific criteria. And there is also an update to another criteria for the most intensive level of agritourism events, which is a criteria that the event must be necessary to support the commercial farm uses on the property or commercial agricultural enterprises in the area. So this again provides more detail on how to sufficiently review that item. There's also clarification on which transportation uses are subject to the farm forest impacts test, and an update to the definition of private park to clarify that private parks must be areas devoted to low intensity outdoor recreation uses for which the enjoyment of the outdoors is a necessary component. And this is in response to, over the years, many types of activities being proposed as private parks in resource zones, things like shooting ranges, paintball, etc. So provides more clarification there as well. There are also some what we're calling other updates, so general cleanup or clarity in this rulemaking package, changes related to those items. So removal of circular references for things like preparation of products on farmland. There's just kind of an error in the way that the rule read. Verification of income for farm dwellings and farm stands. This clarifies that county reviewers can rely on an IRS tax return receipt to verify income. Home occupations, this clarifies that the business must be accessory to the residential use, not more intensive in scope or scale than other uses allowed in the EFU zone. Last kind of category that we have are conforming changes. So just again, cleanup or clarification to make them consistent between administrative rule and statute. Replacement dwellings mirrored the requirements in the farm zones for those also in the forest zone. For template dwellings, there was a one-time opportunity that was afforded by the legislature that expired in late 2023, so removed that reference. And non-conforming schools, there was a minor tweak to some of the requirements for expansion of non-conforming schools in the EFU zone. There's also removal of a circular reference relating to campgrounds, and rabbit processing was added to a list of eligible farm products for processing facilities. So pretty minor change. Two items were not included in this rulemaking package, one related to farm dwellings in conjunction with cranberry operations because we don't see that type of use here, and the other related to childcare because it was a much more extensive package, so we felt it was better as its own standalone text amendment outside of a housekeeping package. So as part of this process, we're proposing amendments throughout county code related to our definitions, exclusive farm use zone, and forest zone chapters, and wanted to note that where possible, we've amended code to directly reference state law rather than copying and pasting the text, as we know that there may be some additional changes coming from the state in the near future. The Planning Commission did review this in June. No comments have been received to date, neither agency nor public comments, and there was a 7-0 unanimous recommendation of approval. So with that, I welcome any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. So just acknowledging that a lot of those topics, incidental and subordinate, private parks, farm use, campgrounds, those all come up in Deschutes County sooner or later. So this is clarity from the state, and some of the case law has bubbled up, I'm sure, from Deschutes County proper. So just big picture statement there. So this is a public hearing on the matter. Is there anyone here to testify on that matter? Farm and Forest Housekeeping Text Amendments. Thank you for joining us today.
Once again, Adam Smith, Schwabe Williamson and Wyatt, 360 Southwest Bond Street, Bend, Oregon. Oh, Suite 500, Bend, Oregon, 97702. I just a quick testimony. My request is that the county commissioners leave the record open, at least the written record open on this particular text amendment. I just noticed sitting in the agenda that the way state rules are being implemented when it comes to the new farm impact test may actually apply that new farm impact test to more uses than the state rules otherwise require. I noted the same to your staff just in the meeting, and I would recommend that you leave the record open so we can kind of work through that issue. It's a new issue that's coming up with a couple of projects in real time, and I just noticed it reading through the proposed text amendment this morning. I'm happy to go into more detail, but my specific request is that you just leave the record open for 7 days so we can investigate this issue more fully with staff.
So kind of narrowly on farm impacts. Test?
Yeah, so there's what's being referred to as the new farm impacts test, which is more or less codifying case law that's relative to the farm impacts test, and was adopted in the state rules OAR 660-033-0130 subpart 5. And it was adopted, I think it was effective at the beginning of the year. I know with some other pending applications, there's been some question about whether or not the new farm impact test is supposed to apply. And the way it's being implemented in Deschutes County Code as proposed will apply to all conditional uses and EFU zones as listed by Deschutes County Code. And I know staff's perspective is that doesn't technically apply to all conditional uses. And so I think there may be just the way it's being implemented may then be applying that new farm impact test to all conditional uses when instead it's supposed to apply to most conditional uses.
And Mr. Smith, how are you proposing to kind of resolve this, or what work are you going to do in this week that you're asking for?
Further conversations with county staff. I think there's a potential conflict that can be clarified with just some minor word changes.
So that this wouldn't have to go back up to the state to change their.
No, it has nothing to do with changing anything at the state level. It's just clarifying in the Deschutes County Code that the new farm impact test applies to the uses as required by the new farm impact test, if that makes sense, as opposed to applying to all conditional uses listed under the Deschutes County Code.
So have our code kind of narrowly define how and when this gets utilized.
Well, and I would probably recommend just referencing back even to the farm impact test for applicability, because that may statutorily change as well. But how to actually do that with the code yet, I apologize, but I just noticed this sitting in the hearing for the other matter. So I think some clarity can be added to the code. If clarity is added to the code, it's going to prevent an individual applicant needing to litigate this issue.
Thank you.
Will, did you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning. Your planning manager, Will Groves. I see this difficulty as well. We made some local choices in how we implement it in code, and I think there's a part that says applicable provisions of, and I think if you move it 8 words, that phrase 8 words to the left, it fixes the problem. But let's take a week and make sure that we don't shoot from the hip and make a inappropriate fix here. I don't think there's any misunderstanding about the goals of what we're trying to do, and just making sure the words do it right.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is a public hearing on the matter. Is there anyone else to testify? Is there anyone remotely with the raised hand feature? So at this time, we'll discuss either closing the record or extending a written record, or where we want to go.
I'm comfortable with leaving the record open for a week.
So just a written record at this time, was that? So we'll close the oral portion, leave a written record open. 1 week period would put new information into the record per se, not in a rebuttal or a final period or anything, just a 7-day window.
That works.
Okay, so yeah, I support that also. So for this, we'll close the oral portion of this, leave the written record open for for any item. I don't know. I'm not clear enough to be able to state what specifically is going to happen here. Yeah.
I mean, I still do have a question or two right now.
Please.
Uh, I think I'm tracking what's in these housekeeping text amendments. I am curious how this will change what we've been seeing. So we get relevant applications on a regular basis. We have land use proceedings and processes. Yeah, how will they be different? What do we experience that will be affected by these changes at the state level?
That's a really good question, Commissioner, and I'll look to Will if I don't cover maybe some of the items. But I think, as I had mentioned, quite a bit of the changes to rule came from pre-existing well-established case law. So quite a bit of this has already been implemented through our hearings process. But now it's, again, specifically, I'll note like the farm impacts test, the new definitions for private parks, for the agritourism standards. Now we just have, a codified way of evaluating those. But I don't see necessarily a significant change for those specific items. Several others were general cleanup. So I think ideally we'll see more streamlined review because we now have specific rule references rather than, noticing an error and knowing that it needs to be updated or having to dig into case law to vet an issue. But Will, if there's anything else you wanted to mention.
So when we see applications, instead of them kind of referring back to several instances of case law, they will just say, state statute says this.
Yes, I believe that's my understanding.
Okay.
They'll utilize our code, which references state statute and state rule, and they'll evaluate under those provisions and their burden of proof.
And Nicole has it exactly.
There you go, backed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and it was mentioned that these basically were directly applying this package day to day also. So this is cleaning that whole scenario up for somebody looking at the county code, not understanding the case law and the state references.
That was my big question. I just wanted to get a feel for how things would be different when we move forward with these changes.
Okay, so record will be open for 7 days, and then this will be rescheduled for follow-up a couple weeks from now, probably.
Excellent. Yeah, so just to clarify, the record will be open until next Wednesday, September 17th at 4 p.m. So if anyone who's listening plans on submitting material, please submit that prior to 4 p.m. And a note that our server can often have delays, so please get that in early if possible. But thank you very much, Commissioners.
Okay, thank you.
The one last thing I'll say is that I am glad that we will be dealing with childcare separately later, and also this farm stand issues will be getting more direction from the state at a later point, hopefully.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
At this time, item number 11, consideration of ordinance for dark skies text amendments. Here we go. Special support.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. Let's see, the first thing that I'm here for is consideration of first reading for the dark skies text amendments. That is ordinance number 2025-018. In your packet, you have the ordinance, which was a standard ordinance, non-emergency, that reflects some minor changes that were made since the public hearing. So the public hearing with the board was held on August 27th, at which time the board closed the public hearing as well as the written record and deliberated then at the same meeting, which was great. Thank you. And so the ordinance provided here reflects the decisions that were made during those deliberations, which were pretty minor. And I will summarize it right now. It had to do with exemptions for holiday lighting, changing the date from a fixed date of a date range of December 1st to January 15th, which was the previous version, to the day after Thanksgiving to January 15th. So that was the only change that was made to the amendments since the public hearing. That is all that I have to present regarding this. It's a pretty straightforward thing. If we proceed as standard, staff will come back in 2 weeks on September 24th for consideration of second reading of ordinance number 2025-018. And then that would become effective 90 days after second reading, which I believe is December 23rd. So just in time for the holidays. And that's all I have is.
So acknowledging that by putting this code in place, it's setting up a window of time for compliance for existing lighting fixtures. So that's a kind of a big step, big move. Not a lot of people are going to be doing that around, but there's a lot of support for dark skies. Also acknowledging that really it's the chapter for outdoor lighting control standards, and we're leading with dark skies, but I mean it's outdoor lighting control standards. Also, one question, and you by following this. Clarity for fixtures that are existing. I think of fixtures that have diffuser panels wrapped around a light bulb. Is there clarity on what that really means? You know, because when we talk about down facing, not being able to see a bulb, I see a lot of fixtures with, you know, just a piece of textured glass wrapped around a bulb that does emit in every direction.
Right. Yeah.
That
It's
come up?
supposed to be, and actually in this version of the amendments, we did put in a little diagram to illustrate fully shielded, which we had a placeholder there before. So I think that will help. It still does need to be fully shielded. So I think regardless of any kind of glass treatment diffusers, it still needs to be fully shielded.
Well, and those are the fixtures in the front of my house, obviously. I mean, you know, it doesn't go up facing because there's a cap to it, but of course there's just diffused glass around a bulb. So that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about kind of the effect of that,
Yeah.
you know, it does become a glowing thing. Sorry.
Well, no, not a problem. So just acknowledging it. And
That's
I mean, we're making this choice for all rural properties, and we're starting a 3-year clock on coming into a compliance.
And to say, as I've noted in the previous meetings here, the legislative component is just one component. We're going to embark on kind of public outreach and awareness, and we're trying to schedule a podcast right now and working on that. And we will come back to the board with that plan probably in.
Well, we want to keep it positive. You know, the vision is to say we're leading with the words dark skies, but it's really just, you know, lighting control standards.
Yeah, incorporating dark skies principles where applicable. That's how we kind of put it.
Any other discussion?
No, this has been a long time coming, and I want to thank everyone, the advocates who pressed for this, the planning commission, and you know, various advisors who have supported them in their work in developing these modifications, and I'm excited to see them move forward. With that, I'll move approval of first reading of ordinance number 2025-018 by title only.
And I will second it. Is there any other discussion? So as I say, now I'm envisioning what do I do for those fixtures, but we'll get there. So calling for the vote, Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair will vote yes. This is first reading of ordinance number 2025-018, an ordinance amending Deschutes County Code Title 15, Building and Construction, to update outdoor lighting control standards. Second reading in 2 weeks.
I will be out of town, so we'll have another member of our CDD department doing that for me.
I think we can handle it.
I think you can handle it.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, item number 12, Eastern Oregon solar siting rules, options for consideration for EFU and forest use zones.
Hello again. For the record again, Tanya Saltzman, Senior Planner. I was not here for the beginning of the meeting. We don't have the presentation up on the screens in the room? Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm on the Zoom, so, okay. Someone can see that.
So,
You all can see that up there?
We
Presentation.
can't see it, but um,
Okay.
do you have cool maps in there?
We have maps.
cool maps.
We have, I don't know if I'm going to hesitate to call them cool. I do have a couple of printouts of some maps, and I have one printout of a presentation. Because I didn't realize that this would be, would you like to share that?
Yeah.
I apologize.
Okay. We can see this, and other people can see it online, and that's pretty good.
Okay. So a little bit of clarity on order on this topic. So, you know, when ordinance is changing the Deschutes County Code, first and second title, reading. Can you help, can legal help with defining the scenario here? So an order adopting, it's not a code change, you know, so I'm just trying to make sure I understand clarity.
I'm going to present, I wish you could see the presentation. So the purpose of the presentation, I'll just go ahead and I'll explain sort of how this works is, on June 26, 2025, LCDC adopted Oregon administrative rules that address the development of photovoltaic solar panels, solar energy sites, excuse me, on EFU and forest land. Those rules go into effect on January 1st. So, and there are a few decision points for the board, whether to go with those rules, to opt out of those rules, or to do a third option, which I will explain. So basically, the orders that are included in your packet are to either opt out, temporarily opt out, or do nothing. So it's not a hearing. It's not technically a legislative land use process. It's kind of a third thing. So that's why I'm here.
And I was trying to understand that
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly where I was at.
It's a little, excuse me. It's a little different from our normal, you know, for instance, what Nicole just did with Farm and Forest, that was an actual kind of changing the code itself. So this is a little bit different from that and would be accomplished by order. So those administrative rules do go into effect on January 1st, 2026. So the board must choose a direction by that time.
Oh, flipped it.
So you do have some time. And choosing to do nothing is also a direction, and I'll explain that shortly. I'll give you a brief overview of the options, and again, I will circle back to these. We have a set of options for EFU lands and a set of options for forest lands. The main chunk of it is pertaining to EFU. Pertaining to EFU, option 1 is to opt out of these new solar siting rules, which would maintain the existing rules that have been in place, as well as local control. Option 2 is to do nothing. Taking no action automatically opts into those new rules on January 1st, 2026. Option 3 is to initiate a customized program under the provisions of Goal 5, temporarily opting out of the new rules while this public process is undertaken. And again, I will explain what all of this means, but I just wanted to lay it out first. For forest lands, option 1 is similar to continue with the existing rules, and I'll explain those. Option 2 is to adopt some new rules that they've proposed, which would be a significant task and would require prioritizing as a work task a way to address this, because it will, if we adopt that new language, it would involve a significant Goal 5 EC analysis. And again, I'll circle back to that. So a little bit of background. House Bill 3409 was passed in 2023. That was the Omnibus Climate Bill. Part of that directed the Department of Land Conservation and Development to collaborate with a Rulemaking Advisory Committee, otherwise known as a RAC, to develop a process for identifying opportunities and reducing conflicts in siting solar photovoltaic energy facilities in Eastern Oregon. So trying to find that balance between, you know, allowing this renewable energy source and also being conscious of the resources that are in Eastern Oregon existing already, natural resources. Rulemaking occurred from November 2023 to June 2025. And then here we are. So an overview of solar projects in Deschutes County to date. Deschutes County has approved 6 between 2015 and 2019, so not a ton. All of them have not been, or I should say, none of them have been appealed. And these are all on EFU zone land. 5 of those 6 have been developed. One of those land uses have expired. You'll see in the presentation that all of them are relatively small compared to the Eastern Oregon projects. All of them, except for one, have been generating 10 megawatts of power. And the average size of them was about 100 acres. So compared to things in Eastern Oregon, which are in the thousands of acres, it's a slightly different category. So rulemaking for EFU lands. So first, as I said, there's 3 options. The existing solar siting rule lives in Division 33 of the OAR. There's a lot of numbers in here, and I apologize because it takes a little while to click. So I'll be back. But basically in Division 33, chapter or section 38, this is already there. It allows for limited solar development on farmland, up to 12 acres on high-value farmland, 20 acres on arable lands, 320 acres on non-arable lands. And none of that would require an exception to Goal 3, which is a very high bar. So that's in place today. And I have some definitions of what arable land and arable soils mean. That comes from the OARs. Again, that's in place today. So now we go to our new options. Yes.
So the 5, 6 solar farms that have already been approved, they got beyond those thresholds, the 12 acres. But what are the 3 numbers you just gave?
12, 20, and 320. I'd have to ask Will or Peter about the special circumstances about those, if they were on non-arable lands or so they didn't hit that threshold. That's my guess.
So
I see.
not high value, not arable, not even arable, just the non-arable lands.
Correct.
Your planning manager, Will Groves. That's my understanding of those, but to the extent that this items continue, we can come back with decision-specific verifications of that. But as I understand it, there's no significant changes to the existing pathway under which the prior solar farms were approved. So presumably they passed through these gates.
Okay.
And without a goal exception. And thinking about the properties that they were on there, they seem non-arable at, remembering air photos of them, but we can double check that they were subject to these criteria and passed through them.
And is that classification, high value, arable, non-arable, is that done using soil surveys similar to the ones that we see used for rezone applications?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into that as well. I didn't work on any of those cases directly, so I'll have to dig into them a little bit to get you an answer on that.
Okay.
I think there's a combination of criteria. I think if it has certain soils that are really, really bad, then that automatically kicks it into some category, but there is also some wiggle room and depending on if there's irrigation as well in terms of high value farmland.
So yeah, for clarity, so high value farmland is decent soil that has irrigation, I'm thinking. Please clarify. And then arable is something that can be tilled and planted, maybe, grass is but maybe not irrigation. And non-arable is just grazing lands, like just large acreage, natural vegetation, cow or some animal walking across trying to eat.
Yeah, and Tanya has in her memo, and we can get you information specifically to these definitions as it parses out. It's important to remember that high value farmland has 2 different definitions for different purposes. So for one of them, if I'm recalling, our local one that I'm most familiar with is certain soils when irrigated.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And then there's a separate definition of high value farmland, and I think it might be the one that applies in this case that has to do with if you have a soil and you're in an irrigation district, so that in theory you could get water. Tanya, do you know that?
That I don't know. I just know the
Okay.
first one.
Okay. So it's likely the first one. We'll follow up on that to make sure it's not the secondary definition.
Well, and just like on Monday, I mean, this is going to be a learning experience and get dialed into what decision we might even make here. So I don't know that we'll proceed today. I think we were both in that spot from Monday even.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's complicated. There's a lot of variables and I'll say that for all of the options, those categories apply. So it would be, the same criteria in terms of arable, non-arable, et cetera, across the board. So it's not changing within those options, if that makes sense. So that's the existing solar siting rule in Division 33. The new solar siting rule, part of it, which is also in Division 33, but a new section called Section 44. This allows for solar development on farmland that has larger acreage. So those thresholds are a little bit higher than the existing rules. 160 acres on high value farmland, 1,280 on arable lands, and 1,920 on non-arable lands. And basically, these rules, so this is what's meant to kind of expedite or make it easier to site solar voltaic facilities, because the rulemaking also kind of already provides a subset of what kind of lands are eligible. So it's already putting sideboards on it, which I'll show on the next slide, in exchange for giving a higher limit. So land eligible for solar siting under the new rule excludes, so you're not allowed to do it, in sage grouse habitat, priority wildlife connectivity areas, high use and very high use wildlife migration corridors, wildlife habitat characterized by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife as Category 1, urban reserve areas, EFU lands with water rights as of January 1st, 2024, high-value farmland, the Metolius area of critical state concern, and anything that's beyond 10 miles of a 69 kV transmission line, 69 or greater. So those lands are pulled out of the potential areas that could use this rule, essentially. So that probably leads you to the question, what does that mean for Deschutes County? What would be eligible? We kind of have an answer, but not really. And I'm going to be frank about this. So this next slide, we don't have data for a lot of these things, notably the Category 1 ODFW wildlife habitat. Water rights, EFU lands with water rights, we don't have data on that. So that's kind of a big hole in our data. And that's tied to high value farmland, as Will just explained, in terms of having irrigation. And locations predominantly beyond 10 miles of a 69 plus kV transmission line. We have some data on where there are lines. We don't have data on the size of those, so it's essentially meaningless. So the tables that are provided in the memo and these kind of scribbly maps that we've given you, they're based on really kind of half the data. So I hesitate, I'm going to be very honest, and I hesitate to put much weight on those maps. It gives a general sense of kind of where stuff could be and couldn't be, but it's not like, if we had these additional categories of data, that eligibility would likely shrink, because, you know, only one subset has water rights. Only one subset of that is not wildlife habitat. So I would just take it with a very large grain of salt. And that's my disclaimer. So in the table, as well as the memo, we do break it down according to acreage category. And again, this is with that limited set of data, just to give you a sense of the scale of properties that could potentially be eligible. And I know Peter and Will touched on this in your work session on Monday, that Deschutes County EFU land is very much parcelized in ways that places in Eastern Oregon generally are not. There tend to be more large, untouched, undivided tracts of land in Eastern Oregon here. You can see here, there's one property that could potentially be eligible that's over 1,000 acres. And that might not even be eligible because it might have water rights on it. We don't know. So we're really, we have a lot of stuff that's just fairly chopped up. And, you know that from all of our other land use things that we do in the county. But this table aims to illustrate that. And again, it is based on limited data. In the slideshow, I just have these two maps to illustrate the eligibility. And again, take it with a grain of salt. The green splotches represent potential eligibility minus Category 1 wildlife habitat, water rights, and high value farmland. The second map, which is a little difficult to read, but we wanted to include that data because I know it was discussed. It shows the transmission lines, which we don't have data of if it's one of those 69 kV or more lines. It could, I think my hunch is that the stuff in South County is probably not those high power lines. It's largely the big ones, but that's just my hunch. And we included the borders of the irrigation district, which is in maroon, just to indicate that, because I know there was discussion about that. So that's our very limited data maps. And that would be the new rules in Division 33. So that is the thing that if the county does nothing, those rules would apply. To continue, there's also new rules for Division 23, which is natural resources. This would allow county to create their own customized program under Goal 5 provisions. So where the new Division 33, gives this large kind of subset of areas, and then there could be criteria for those. This allows you to do a customized drawing of eligible areas within the county based on a robust public process. So this would be a project unto itself. Essentially, you're drawing a map of potentially eligible areas for solar, where you want it, where you don't want it. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to apply there, but just setting those boundaries. There, of course, are eligibility requirements for those. You still can't put it in sage-grouse habitat. You have to draw it where it is allowed and eligible. But that requires a comprehensive plan amendment. And that designates those certain areas, and that would allow for the largest potential acreage. So in exchange for doing this more robust process, you do get higher allowances for those solar facilities. So that would be up to 240 acres on high-value farmland, 2,560 acres on arable lands, and 3,840 acres on non-arable lands. Again, this would be a public process, probably community conversations about where these things should not go. And if the board opted to do this, it would require a temporary opt-out of the new Division 33 rules, the other ones that would automatically come into play on January 1st, because you don't want to have those kind of competing at the same time. So that would be a temporary opt-out while this process is underway to delineate those new areas. I'll take a breath. It's a lot. Before I go on to the forest lands, I'll pause and ask any questions or thoughts, or do you just want to let it marinate for a little? I'm here for you.
So at a very high level, after trying to look at all this information, I'm not sure whether this choice really matters very much, because there are so few very large properties. We have an existing process. No applicant that has put in for a solar farm through our existing process has been denied. And we see projects approved up to 180, 160 acres, 156 acres. So if there's very few properties bigger than 156 acres, and people who've come in with applications for 156 acres or smaller projects have all gotten approval, it's hard to really see how our existing process isn't meeting our needs, given the kind of size class profile of properties that we have. Now, maybe there's people who have arable land properties that are a little bit bigger who are interested in this, and so that would be a reason to consider moving forward with the state rules if we want to support solar project development over retention of arable lands. But that I think is a really big question in and of itself. So there's just a couple of initial thoughts, and I mean, I would welcome, any thoughts from staff about, whether I'm incorrect in saying I don't know if this choice actually matters very much, or pointing out the ways that choosing one versus choosing the other might matter.
I think that's spot on, and kind of what we've been discussing a lot in our hallways. I think Peter spoke to this a little bit at the spontaneous work session on Monday, that you know, again, we don't have, as you noted, there's just not a ton of these big parcels that would necessarily benefit from these new rules. They might, but it hasn't been a pinch point to our knowledge for Deschutes County. So while it would, you know, opting in or the automatic opt-in to the new rules would raise that ceiling of eligibility. So therefore, theoretically promoting and supporting more solar on the ground. The reality is that it's unclear how many properties could actually take advantage of that. So that's kind of the decision point that the board will have to struggle with, as we have as staff.
If I may, another consideration is that there may in fact be some property that would benefit from these new standards in a way that maybe the board would find suitable. You know, by you taking this action of opting out, it's not an irrevocable action. So you might have someone come before, let's say you did opt out and did not, automatically opt into these new rules. You might have a particular applicant come before you in the future and say, hey, you know, I know it was confusing at the moment that you opted out. It was tough to tell which properties were applicable. I've got one. And, you know, I'd really like to take advantage of this and I'd like you to unlock this door for me. So, you know, at that point, we would have an applicant who could come back with, you know, the expertise that they come with. We're looking at a specific property. And see if, you know, there's an interest in making this available for the very limited number of properties. There may be no Goldilocks property that can take advantage of this. And the limitations of our ability to map that are one of the difficulties associated with it. To two of your previous questions briefly, the high value farmland definition is the alternative one. So simply being, for the purposes of solar projects, simply being in an EFU zone property and in an irrigation district, regardless of soils, is sufficient to kick you into high value for the purposes of that analysis. It's unlike the high value farmland definition we use for most of all of our other application types. And that comes from ORS 195, where we go, 379. And then the other question you had, were prior applications subject to arable land standards? Yes. And they were found to be non-arable.
Okay. So all those prior projects were in non-arable land.
I checked the two that I had easiest access to, and they were found to constitute non-arable lands. If we continue this matter, we can dig in deeper.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, good morning, Peter Gutowski, Community Development Director. To Commissioner Ching's observation about the applicability of these new rules, another aspect that you could consider, I mean, of course, Commissioner Adair is not here, and I think there's a lot to consider. This matter likely will be placed on a subsequent agenda item as you contemplate the possibilities and the terminology. But if the board decided to go with option one, which would be to opt out, that doesn't mean that a future county commission couldn't reconsider it. I mean, there is a scenario, where, at some point in the future, someone's interested in this opportunity, in which case the Board of County Commissioners could consider it on a work plan. We could consider option two, in greater detail in terms of what's changed, in terms of opportunities for solar siting, or even option three. And so I wanted to make this point just to acknowledge that this door isn't permanently closed. You can, one of the contemplations, if it was option three, is you could opt out and then allow staff to develop, as part of a work program item, a process that would engage the community to determine these sub areas that would be, high priorities for solar siting. So that I use that as an example, again, to the extent that while we haven't had any interest since 2019, 2020, right, the last approved solar farm, that doesn't mean that the market couldn't change, opportunities couldn't present themselves. So again, just if you were to consider option one, it doesn't forego future opportunities to the extent that circumstances change. So I think that was an emphasis I just wanted to put on the record for you as you consider this program.
And, another question. So if we retain our our current case by case basis, if someone wanted to pursue a larger project, they could still do that by seeking a Goal 3 exception. So it's, you know, just retaining our current process isn't it's not a ban on larger projects. It is just a
Very high barrier.
a Goal 3 exception is cumbersome. Okay. Yeah. So the county actually owns a couple of parcels that put together make up about 500 acres, right on the north side of Bend. And yeah, I think this is an interesting property to think about, kind of running through these various processes, because there are a whole lot of other values associated with this property, which are the kinds of things we would want to consider in a local, in a case by case, local discretion type, review process. So this 500-acre property right on the north side of Bend, we've actually been approached by 2 solar developers, asking about feasibility studies, asking about a lease. There was an inquiry about a lease. And so there are multiple pieces that make up 500 acres. So it wouldn't, in the classification, size classification kind of table that you've put together, I don't know where it actually shows up. It doesn't show up as a 500-acre property. It shows up as pieces that we can add up to make 500 acres. But I'd be curious for you to just walk me through, current case by case basis, new opt-in process. How would that look different, running that project through those 2 different processes, that 500 acres?
That's certainly, we want to do that. Specific property, take a look. It may be that there's one. So of course, this new, what I'm calling fast track process that, that's been made available by the rule making committee, these properties may be excluded at the outset for one or more reasons. So we would need to do a detailed analysis. And your questions, it's a good point in that there are occasionally contiguous ownerships that might go above an acreage standard that our table didn't capture. So I think this is a great opportunity for us as we come back, both as I think something concrete to look at these specific properties and talk about the process as we would anticipate them, what an application would look like. Would they qualify at the outset, based on these rules? That requires a little bit of a lift, and certainly we couldn't have that ready by next Wednesday. But we could, to the extent that we reconvene this, and of course you only have to make this decision for the first of the year, we could come back with an analysis. And I think that the concreteness of that would give you some real footing in terms of understanding the different processes. So we could certainly dig in there and give you our take on how that might likely play out.
Yeah, I would add, I think on the face of it, and I was looking down towards Tanya because we were chatting about this yesterday evening about how option 1 compares to option 2. Option 1, the conditional use process for the 6 solar farms that the county has approved. It was a conditional use site plan, the conditional use criteria, really looking at compatibility for natural resources. The 6 solar farms were not in any locally designated Goal 5 inventories. The property you're speaking to, the Highway 97 corridor, is largely devoid of Goal 5 resources, but it looks at compatibility to neighboring properties, suitability, and so you have that kind of baked in conditional use criteria that's wanting to make sure that development is essentially compatible with the surrounding area. As I understand, if the board decided to do nothing and opt in, I think we would, and take this again at face value, there's still the ability to put conditions on solar farms. I still think I think we would consider a separate, we have tiers of different conditional use criteria, depending on the complexity of the project. I could foresee a special conditional use fee for a solar farm if we do nothing and we're allowing them to opt in, because they would, through the provisions under state law, they're subject to different criteria. The conditional use criteria that I've just summarized would go away, and we would just apply the rules that have been recently codified under Oregon Administrative Rules. And so that's looking at eligibility. Do you meet the eligibility factors? It's looking at, are you impacting any farmland in any way that would have to be mitigated? We have the ability to, I think, consistent with the prior decisions, if we have require a property owner, a solar developer to post a bond for reclamation, but it would be a narrow set of criteria because of the emphasis that these rules are underscoring, which is that the county is supportive of solar projects if they can meet these eligibility criteria. So we can get back with far more detail, but on the face of it, that's how I am conceptualizing the difference between our standard approach, conditional use site plan, versus if we did nothing and an opt-in, there would be a conditional use and a site plan because we need to know where the various structures are going, and have the ability to essentially impose certain conditions by the decision maker. But one has far more discretion as the overall footprint in relationship to existing development is, and any natural resources examined, versus the alternative, as I've articulated under the rules, which is there's support for a solar project if they can get through the eligibility criteria established by the state. So one is a little bit more weighty, the other one is not, if you can get through those thresholds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you. But I would still love to see a kind of like scenario.
Yeah, we can create a table of compare.
I mean, and it doesn't have, you don't have to tell me what we would decide.
Right.
It's
What's the criteria?
just like flow chart it out for me, like this one has a goal 3 exception, this one doesn't, and that kind of stuff. That would be great. Yeah, I very practical question I would ask is, so going with I don't know whether this actually makes a difference which one we choose. Which one is more work, for staff, to basically just keep going with our existing process, or to make whatever changes are necessary if we opt in.
So we're opted in by default. So the workload for staff to opt in is basically 0. And then
We wouldn't have to rewrite any local code or anything like that.
yeah, we're forced into it.
That's
We're actually precluded from doing anything about it. If we hold still, we are opted in. And then we find out, we just kind of hold our breath and see if some developer sees a piece of property that appears to be eligible for it and comes with an application of that type. There may be no such properties or no such economically viable properties or no such developer, but we wait and see. If we opt out, what happens is that door is closed for the moment. And to the extent a developer comes to us and says, hey, that Eastern Oregon solar standard, what'd you guys do with it? Oh, we closed that door. Would you consider reopening it? Let's talk to the board. We've got a Goldilocks property and we think that it's the right path for this. So both of those efforts, one is that you sign an order one way or the other to either, to opt in, opt out here. And there's no further work from staff until an application is made. It's the third option, which we go through an extensive public process, is really staff heavy. But both of opting in and opting out, both are, reversible options, and, are really the entire effort level is collecting your signature.
And I would add, just as we kind of leverage each other's remarks, I think that one notable difference is that under the standard process, through notice of application, property owners would certainly be aware of the solar project and of the various criteria that it's being evaluated under. if the board were to do nothing and allow the rules to come in place, to the extent that someone took advantage of that, we would still send notice of application. The difference would be, I think the public, I suspect many of our residents are not, even though the bulletin reported on these rules in today's paper, the public's not really tracking this. So the notice of application, as I foresee, would say a solar project's being proposed under these recently adopted administrative rules, which language would be determined, which recognizes an emphasis for solar siting in this particular location. And our colleagues, our planners would then, as they do very well, they would be managing the record, and they would be managing residents' potential concerns, like, about this being kind of a sweet spot per se, and that would be different than the conventional process. It's not in, our staff is well versed in complex and controversial applications, matters of first impressions, but that would certainly be another one in that category as residents come to those that are concerned or are impacted by a potential siting of a solar project. I could foresee many being concerned or expressive as to the favorable treatment potentially that a solar project could have if the board did nothing and we administered option 2. So that's something that I think that's important for the board to consider, because again, as we compare the standard approach, the conventional approach versus option 2, doing just automatically opting in, the board would essentially be acknowledging that this is an opportunity that if sites are eligible, that would give them give a project a greater ability to demonstrate they comply with the law to site a solar project than would otherwise be available under the standard approach that I talked about earlier, which has a huge emphasis on compatibility. It really gives the decision maker discretion in ways that option 2, if we do nothing and we're just kind of opted in, does not.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's all very helpful, and I look forward to more. Thinking about this more, looking at it more. I mean, just at the very high level, I come into this understanding our community needs more electricity. That there's the fights about new transmission projects coming into the area. Kind of highlight that we need more energy, and we need it to come from somewhere. I like the idea of generating some of the electricity that we need locally. I like the idea that it would come from clean energy sources. But there are these basic questions of compatibility that the state doesn't know our landscape as well as we do. And so the idea, from that perspective, the idea of maintaining a local case by case customized process, is also appealing. So, it'll be interesting to proceed with this to try to thread the needle of, doing what we can to promote local distributed renewable energy generation, but also to take care, be mindful of our responsibilities for all of the values in land in our community. I do think I don't really see that the choice between option 1 and option 2. I think that's a real choice, but I don't see any point in pursuing option 3, just given the size of the properties that exist in Deschutes County. It just doesn't seem like it. We could go through a whole lot of work to make a project possible, and then there's no eligible property owners to come in and pursue it. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to go through that work until someone, comes in the door, or Goldilocks comes in the door and says, I actually have a project that would fit this, that we want to pursue. So that's just my initial 2 cents.
Couple thoughts, Wasco, Jefferson, Crook, Harney, Lake County, this is for. This isn't Deschutes County's domain as much. There's big plays that are happening already in Wasco and Jefferson, all of them probably. So Deschutes, it may or may not matter at all. It's just going to be interesting to see what happens. Boardman power plant was 500 megawatts, but that was base load on all the time, every day. When we look at these power generation numbers here, we have 10 megawatts times 5, which is 50. Sounds like we're doing a tenth of what we need, but solar is only 1/3 load, one third factor. So sun's going to be out loading, creating solar power a third of the day, basically, average throughout this. So it'll be interesting. It's all about, can we normalize the duck curve, which is that shape you see on the solar output, over time in a 24-hour period, as batteries going to come on or not. So as I say, this is a big, interesting dynamic play right now. Obviously, the advocates that want to do 2 and 3 square miles. So remember, 1,280 is 2 square miles. 1920 is 3 square miles, arable and non-arable lands. We don't have the big, and we may have some grazing areas, but we don't have wheat farms either. So I don't even know that this is Deschutes County's domain. That's kind of one of my thoughts. So it kind of gets you to discussing it and maybe doing nothing, but we'll see. I'm not ready to make that decision today. And I'd love for anybody to give us more information about what this means. As I say, I know that having the rules come down from the state shows me that there's long-term active solar advocates that are trying to define the playing field so it's an easy downhill run at some point when it happens. As I say, that still doesn't come to a conclusion that it's Deschutes County proper. We've got geothermal on the side of Newberry. They're talking gigawatts, possibly more than what Boardman used to do, but that's multiple wells, many years, a lot of capital investment. So I don't know what all that's going to look like. Another point of reference, 500 megawatts at Boardman. Data centers in Crook County are using 400 megawatts, and they are using it all day, every day. So the scope of what's happening here is really interesting. The data centers in Crook County are using more electricity than the peak demand of the city of Bend. So, these are the things you learn. And I was like, oh, interesting. So it's wonderful to put a square mile of solar somewhere, but it's all about the batteries and how do you load balance that over time. So there's big transitions happening. People are true believers. Recently I heard somebody say that, remember, solar energy is free. It's like the sun is free, but we're destabilizing a system where we don't have batteries to normal, load balance that supply. So I'm just saying that's what I think of when I think of this domain. So it'll be, and then people can put solar on your house. If you have battery backup in your house, it's all evolving right now. So,
and the other big item in the backdrop, which is referred to in the staff memo, is that on public lands, federal public lands, there's a whole nother process going on. This Western Solar project, that the staff memo only mentions one of the 2 projects that is moving, on a track in Deschutes County, 3,000 acres, 700 megawatts. So when we have opportunities like that, that are being cited in areas that, the BLM already filtered to say, these are some of the lowest resource value lands that we have in the BLM's inventory. When we have projects like that in the pipeline, I don't know how much sense it makes for us to be quibbling over, we could, that project could be 128 acres or it could only be 100 acres, So
So it's just kind of like on Monday, we could see that we're probably not going to get to a decision today, but just talking about it, not doing anything is making a decision. So we'll see where this all goes.
Say that I do have a couple more slides.
Oh, please. Yeah.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
It's very brief. And again, these all can be continued conversations, but as I noted, the real meat of this rulemaking is the EFU, but they also added one option for forest lands. The new, sorry, my computer's just, the new language for forest lands allows for solar development as a conditional use on forest land with larger acreage than existing rules. So same kind of concept. In forest lands, it would be up to 240 acres. Beyond that would be a goal exception. This excludes the Metolius area of critical state concern. The current rules allow only up to 10 acres. So that's a big difference, 10 to 240. However, utilizing this new provision of language, which we can choose to do or not do, the board can choose to do or not do, would require a extensive Goals 5 EC analysis. So because our forest lands have all these wildlife resources, noted Goal 5 resources, so we have elk, we have deer winter range, we have deer migration, that would have to be an analysis for against each of those resources. So that would be essentially a work plan project unto itself, which can absolutely be done, but it would have to be prioritized for staff as an item to tackle. Otherwise, we stick with you can stick with the 10 acres limit. So that's kind of another decision point to ponder. And lastly, that's all I have. I just summarized the options for you. So if the board would like, we can come back with an analysis or a drill down into, as we were speaking of, one potential scenario and kind of how that would play out under option 1 or option 2. And we can do that and answer any other questions in the future. That sounds good to you?
We'll have our District 2 meeting with the commissioners from pretty much all those counties I mentioned too. So we'll be able to communicate and kind of compare notes a little bit and understand if there's differences, or as I say, I mean, if there's some big plays out there that are happening around Eastern Oregon, maybe there won't be a whole lot of focus on a mega project here on private property.
I mean, there just aren't all the opportunities.
Yeah.
Like there was one property over 1,000 acres. You know, and when I was in Wasco County about a year ago, I went and saw a 5,000 acre project. So it's, I mean, you know, the really big energy developer, you know, solar developers, they're looking for places where they have those scale opportunities. I just don't think we're going to have a lot of interest here. So we can talk to the other counties, but I think our situation, you know, our land ownership profile is just so unique that it's not going to be, it's going to be apples and oranges type decisions for what they're thinking and what we need to think about.
You mentioned 5,000 acres. So this is 1,920 for non-arable.
Yeah.
EFU. So I mean,
Yeah, I don't
there's
know.
larger projects than that, and this is what we're talking about.
I don't know how they're doing that.
Yeah.
Or I mean, maybe that was all approved before this rule, this state rulemaking happened. You know, on the I do actually hit. So I would like to see that that kind of scenario play out for a real property where there's actually been interest expressed by solar developers. But also on this forest use zoning piece, would it be possible to just bring us two maps of a map of forest zoned lands and a map that shows the various wildlife inventory, Goal 5 wildlife inventory maps?
Mapping the Goal 5.
Just show those maps next to each other, because I mean, I think that's gonna tell us a lot. Because you know, the private forest land that's owned in this area, typically on the margin of the range of Ponderosa pine, I mean, that's always right in the middle of, you know, winter range, summer range migration corridors and stuff like that. So I am fairly certain that that forest land is going to be, wildlife inventory, or wildlife overlay, ineligible, the vast majority of it. But it'd be great to just have a quick look at that. The other question I wanted to ask, just to make sure I'm really clear about where the forest zone land is in Deschutes County. Juniper woodlands they are not forest zones. If I understand correctly, I mean, these are, post-European settlement, ingrowth of juniper. It is, there's very limited commercial value in that species. It's like the juniper tree that is tall enough, straight enough to actually be milled. It's like one in 5,000, right? So, but I just want to double check that these kind of post-European settlement, juniper woodlands, we have many tens of thousands of acres of that now that didn't exist 150 years ago. That stuff is not, it doesn't qualify for forest zoning.
And generally it is not. So when forest zoning was applied, it's to our harvestable tree species there, but those typically zones were applied per parcel. So to the extent that a parcel straddled, ponderosa, lodgepole, juniper, there I have seen examples, rarely in my 20 years here, where a property had some forest zone areas that had some junipers on it. But if I recall correctly, it was cases where the property was predominantly, having a pondo or lodgepole on it, and it just was allocated to the entire property rather than skillfully divided at the juniper boundary.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, on this question, that the forest zoning, I would generally lean towards conservation of forest lands, but if junipers were included, then I would lean differently.
Understood.
It'd be a great way to remove some junipers.
Well, that's what we've seen. I mean,
Yeah.
those projects on the east side of Bend, I mean, that's what we had.
So do nothing and automatically opt in. Would that be done by order, or would that be truly do nothing? Yeah, I'm just making sure there's not another order there. That's all I was asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no order. The only orders are associated with either opting out
Mhm.
or doing the customized program, so a temporary opt-out.
Good. Well, so we'll bring this back and, run it down the path a little bit more.
Thank you.
Thanks for the conversation.
Thank you. And I'll acknowledge Central Oregon Land Watch to send a letter in, and they're asking for option 2 or option 3. I'll take this presentation.
Yeah, I would love
And
a
if-
copy of the.
yeah.
I can email that.
One more. Oh, yeah, okay.
Sorry, I didn't have more printouts.
Oh, not a problem.
Sorry, the system.
Wiggle some wires. Okay, so other items. Is there anything, Nick? Anybody else? Other items? Anything else, Commissioner Chang? So at this time, we do have 2 executive sessions that are being planned for. Oh, 1, okay.
Do the
Yep.
whole thing.
The Deschutes County Board of Commissioners will now convene an executive session as the governing body of the 911 Service District pursuant to ORS 192.660. The specific authorization for this executive session is ORS 192.6602 subsection D, which allows the board to meet to discuss labor negotiations. Designated staff and the media are allowed to remain during the executive session. However, the media may only report that the board met in executive session and the identified basis for meeting in executive session. Recording devices are not permitted. No final decisions will be made, and at the conclusion, we will open the doors and invite the audience back to the room.
So we're convening as an executive session as the governing body of 911, and we'll be back following. Okay, so we are back from executive session. Please proceed as discussed. Is there anything else for this board meeting? Seeing none, meeting adjourned.